Planning a large fishing event is no easy task. I've planned smaller sized trips and schools that has taken a considerable amount of effort, and it's hard to imagine what planning a fly fishing tying and expo would be like and how to bring it all together to make it one of the greatest events of its kind. Today's guest did just that and has brought back and created one of the biggest fishing expos of its kind. And today you're going to discover how this expo and resources we share will help you have more success on the water this season. This is the Wet Fly Swing Podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers than just about anyone out there. Bruce Staples, author of multiple books on fishing the Yellowstone area, is back to take us into eastern Idaho and the Fly Fishing and Tying Expo, and you're going to find out what you can expect for the next one coming up this year. You're also going to get some of the best flies for fishing Yellowstone Country, a little insight into Sheridan Lake and some of the lakes around this part of the country. This is also one of the places we will be traveling to for the Stillwater School with Phil Roy this year, so we're going to talk about that and find out. We're also going to get into a little on fishing meadow streams. Plus, you'll hear about some of his favorite books and which ones and people you should be following this season. He's back. Bruce Staples. Here we go. How you doing, Bruce?
Doing good. We're sure out fishing, but right now we get stormy weather.
All right. Is it? Yeah, we're getting hit pretty hard too with some rain. Is it still snowing there, or are you guys back into the rain?
Oh no. Going around different places, heading towards southwest corner of Yellowstone. There's still a lot of snow in the trees. In fact, Sunday I was out fishing Sheridan Reservoir, private. Private place, and I was surprised at how the snow. This is the Island Park area, Henry's Lake, Last Chance. Instead of all the snow sitting around, in the trees in the sheltered areas. And of course, the road to Sheridan, as soon as the pavement ends, it was really muddy, Fishing was only fair. The wind was not much of a help and everything, but everybody caught fish. But I think Mike landed the biggest rainbow, about 22 inches, good fish. But it's going to be an interesting season now because we had real good snowfall. But with respect to the expo, as much as possible, and as much as we think is correct, we try to give ideas of predictions of what the upcoming season is. And usually at the time of the expo, the Henry's Fork, especially from Ashton Dam on down to Chester Dam, is always very fishable. This year, it turned out it was good fishing for people that came up, from the Californians and the Utahns and the Arizonans and the West Idaho folks. It kind of jives with the expo. That time of year, if we wait till April, you're starting to get into the runoff season. So we usually March is a good thing for that. And this year we have really nice weather, so it turned out to be pretty darn good. And of course, we had a huge crowd at the expo. There were times, and if you were walking the wrong way, you'd get trampled.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's become a national event. We had tyers from places like Florida, Tennessee, and Ohio, places like that come. Most of it's local, I think altogether, with respect to tyers, if we count the veterans, they tie in a separate area just because some of the guys are PTSD folks, If you count them, we ended up with 135, 140 tyers, which is a pretty good size. Not quite as big as the Oregon show.
Yep.
But, hey, we have only, in this immediate area, only 250,000 people, and they've got an order of magnitude more over there. So, but anyways, big success as far as we're concerned. We don't have everything tied down with respect to how much we made yet.
Yeah.
But we think it was probably the best one yet, or at least the equivalent of 2023.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I think that's good, and I think that's what we're going to be hoping to get a few more people out in 2024. And I think right now it's scheduled for March 21st and the 22nd of 2025, right?
Yeah, it's a Friday and Saturday affair, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that's perfect. So we got the 2025 show coming up, and it was a great success this year. What do you as you look at the show, did you guys do much different in 2024 versus 2023, or was it just more the word is continuing to get out there?
2023 was a success, so we didn't change anything at all to speak of in a major sense. Same thing. We had the they call it the Hero Arena of the Mountain America Center.
Yep.
That was pretty much same as in 2023 with respect to the tyers and with respect to the commercial vendors. I think commercial vendors, we had around 40. And the way the layout is right on the floor of the Hero Arena, we have the fly tying demos, and around the corners around the edges, are divided up into commercial vendor booths. So anything from places like, say, Trout Hunter or Sage on down to maybe some local folks.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. So good. So it's great to hear that the show's kind of building, and I'm sure 2025 will be even a bigger year. Do you plan on, as you look ahead at 2025, maybe talk about that a little bit? We'll put a link in the show, episode 269. You talked about the show, kind of getting up to it. But for this next one, how does that look? It looks like you guys kind of take a break till September, then start cracking in.
Yeah, we usually start in September, and get going, get more intense as time goes on. Now, what we've done, back in 2023, we signed a 3-year contract with the Mountain America Center. We call it MAC. Everybody's got acronyms. And so 2025 will be the last year of that contract, 3-year contract. And they've asked us already about renewal and everything. And the answer is kind of a very certain yes. If we're going to have the Expo, this is the place we want it, because you folks have the facility. 2023 was the first year they're in full-time operation. It's an interesting place. We've got a minor league hockey team here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they play on that floor.
Who's that? Remind us again who that hockey team is.
It's called the Spud Kings.
Oh, that's right. The Spud Kings. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're guys that maybe go on to college down at ISU or BYU, Idaho, something like that. And local kids have gotten, hockey mania, these kind of things. And then there's a few people from outside that come in and play hockey. But not only that, but there's concerts on that floor. And there's even motorhead events, these kind of things. And then, community things like high school basketball tournaments and all. So it's a full-use facility. And for the community-related events like our show or, say, a high school basketball tournament, something like that, the cost of using the facility is a lot lower than a concert or a motorhead event, that kind of thing. The people that run it are community-minded folks, they're on our side, and help us promote.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's go back to what I was hoping to dig into today was, we mentioned we've had you on in 269. We talked about the Expo. And then before that, we talked about some of your books and Fishing Yellowstone. So I wanted to hit on that today, those two pieces, get an update on the Expo for 2025, and then talk about, some more on fishing. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's jump into the fishing a little bit. Maybe give us a reminder for those that didn't catch the one before, a couple of the books you've written out in that area. Maybe you can describe those real quick.
Well, first, I'll talk about, this goes back to the mid-1990s. I did 3 books for Amato Publications, and working with Frank, he's a good guy. He's got to be. He's a steelheader. But I did 3 books for him, and essentially now, you're talking 30 years later, these are collector items.
Yeah.
But there's a few things that are still in demand. He did that River Journal series, and I did the Yellowstone Park chapter in it. But beginning in, it was be about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I got thinking that, I didn't see anything updating a list of flies coming from our area. The reason why I thought that was important is most of these were flies that were tied by locals that knew when and where to go and what kind of patterns to tie. And so I ran that by, what's her name? I think it's Judith Schnell over at Stackpole. And at the same time, I was concerned that, I see a lot of pieces that are partial on the history of West Yellowstone. George Grant did some, and there's a few others around, but they're all disjointed. And so instead of the flies, what I did is I asked her about how about a book on the fly fishing history of West Yellowstone, Montana? And at first, well, we don't think so. Put it on hold. We're not really excited about that now. But let's go on with the book about 500 patterns that were tied up by, greater Yellowstone area flytyers. And so I worked on that, and that came out in 2014. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's hard to realize, 10 years ago.
Right.
It's one of the more complete books on fly patterns for the greater Yellowstone areas. There are other very good works around, too. So that worked out pretty good. And then there was some kind of a philosophy change at Stackpole, forget the name of the parent company. But I got thinking, there's books out all over the place and, articles all over the place about the famous rivers up here, the Madisons, the Henry's Forks, the fire holes. But over the years, I'm kind of an explorer kind of guy. I kind of got soured on some of these more crowded places, beautiful places, good fishing. Mm-hmm. But as I could see, they're getting more and more populated by positive and negative people. Yeah. Socially. And so I just, intensified going into the backcountry and finding places off the backcountry a bit. And so I got in touch with Stackpole again, and they didn't let me finish my sentence. They knew right away that, hey, this is a book that should come out because it gets people more, here's how you can get more solitude and find a place where just fishing is just as good, scenery's great, et cetera, like that. And so I started working with, I forget the fellow's name there at Stackpole. But anyways, we put that book out. It came out in 2017. And it was fun doing that. I mean, it was really fun because you didn't have the knowledge of most of these places, Fall River Basin, southwest corner of the park, Centennial Valley, of course, Widow's Pool was famous, but some of the other places to fish up there, the Blackfoot River system in Idaho and some of the Palisade Reservoir tributaries. That was fun doing that. I had a depth of experience fishing all of these. And so we put it out. It came out 2017. And right after it came out, I got the word from Stackpole, said, hey, we got good news. Well, what's that? It said, we do want to do a book on West Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. And I'd already had a draft roughed out of what we wanted to do it. So we worked on that. And that came out in 2022. And these last two books are still, in demand. I'll put it that way. The book in West Yellowstone wasn't as much fun, but the thing that really helped was I brought Bob Jacklyn in, he's passionate about the history of West Yellowstone, but he's so darn busy he doesn't have a chance, to sit down and write, running his business during the summer. Then he's out on the circuit, most of the winter and all that. So he would send me information, a lot of the photos that he had gathered over the years. We fashioned that into a book, but there were, he helped tremendously in this function. There's a lot of misinformation or misconceptions about the history of West Yellowstone. And he'd quash those. And no, this is the way it is because he'd collected the information like nobody else up there. Of course, I had great help from the Craig Mathews and, the other people. Craig's a great guy. I don't know if you know Craig or something, but he's a gentleman, just like Bob. These are honest guys that when they say something, you can rely on it. But we put that book out, and I still remember back at Stackpole, they wanted a picture. This is just an example of what I'm saying, things that weren't quite where they should be. They wanted a picture of the Lamar River. Oh, yeah. Cover of the book. Boy, did I jump on that one. I said, hey, if this book were featuring, say, Gardner, Montana, or Cook City, Montana, places like that, very appropriate to have the Lamar River. But when you look at West Yellowstone, the river that you really want because it's in the park and outside the park and extremely popular and a very good stream. You want the Madison. So I had to fight a bit. We got a picture of the Madison. I think it's the Beaver Meadows, picture of that on the cover. But right away, I just like with the Backcountry book, I get a few people say, you're giving away secrets, because there is a fishing section on that. And I said, well, I've had 35 years fishing experience, maybe even close to 40 fishing in this area with great success and an accumulation of knowledge. And I have no problem sharing that. And I mentioned this in the book on fishing the greater Yellowstone backcountry. I have no problem sharing my experience and my knowledge with somebody that has the same environmental values or even better than mine. So that kind of quashes, you're out to make money or anything. I say, hey, I don't need to do that. I just want to give people my experience that'll help them. And that's, like I say, I've got email and text messages back. Can you help me with this? We're coming up here in August. Where should we fish? What should we do? Those kind of things.
Is this book, this is the one you cover, is this Fly Fishing West Yellowstone, a history and guide?
Yeah. Fly Fishing West Yellowstone, history and guide. That's the last one that came out in 2022.
Yeah, with you and Bob. Okay, yeah, and I see that. So, and I just want to give a kind of a shout to we mentioned it before, just so we don't forget on the Expo. It's srcexpo.org if people want it, just in case we don't circle back to that. But this is good on the book. It looks like you guys cover quite a bit. I mean, you talked about the history, top fishing spots, things like that. What were some of you had a section more on like iconic events. Is this mostly focused around West Yellowstone, or are there other areas that the book covers?
No, it's strictly West Yellowstone. And essentially the book's in two parts. The history section, I would have made it longer, but people I work with at Stackpole, says, hey, we want it this way.
Sure.
And so what we did is we had the section on history goes back essentially to the late 19th century when the Fish and Wildlife Service came in and planted things like brook trout and lake trout and rainbows, all the exotics and everything, which eventually crowded out the cutthroat, grayling, and, was still pretty good whitefish. Whitefish has really, really survived quite well. The native cutthroat, they need help, and grayling even more. So it relates the history from that period right up to the present. For example, right up, when Craig Mathews sold his business, when was that long ago?
Yeah.
Right up to that. And of course, Bob's looking at retirement too. And then the next section, or welded in with it, is the where to go fishing section.
Yeah, top fishing spots.
Yeah, top fishing. But the other section is fly patterns that, I'm a fly tyer, and so this had to be part of it. Is a section of nearly 200 flies that are essentially native to the area.
Mm.
Not the Adams, not the Joe's hopper, but, say Bob Jacklyn's hopper and stoneflies, and Craig Mathews' life cycle flies, and then, of course, lesser-known people from the past, like Vint Johnson and Don Martinez. It was fun getting that information together.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process of gathering it, questions we got, and after the book came out is, I thought this was happening. No, that didn't happen. This event happened at such and such a time during World War II. The number of people coming went down. Just the deep pocket guys were fishing up.
Yeah. How did you get all that lined out to be the historical stuff, to get the dates? And because, just you guys, how'd you do that?
Well, I just studied what was available, and then we got help from people like Bud, Bud Lilly.
Yeah.
And interviewed him a number of times. God, what a great guy, and, looked at the people that he promoted, the Dave Whitlocks and people like that. But talking with those people, and then having Bob verify these things, because he had jotted down notes on these, specific things. And for a good example was Centennial Valley and the Widow's Pool. He knew the family. He knew the widow's family, the Hanson family. Lillian Hackett Hanson, she was a widow and everything. He knew the history of that because he knew the family. He knew a couple of people very well. And so here's a guy like Bob with something like that was, so important to him, and he could remember these things. So that was one way. And then I'd talk to people like people that their family in the past owned some of the resorts, like Elk Lake Resort and something like Wilderness Edge Resort. I talked to the family that owned those, that their ancestors owned and started those resorts. It was really just fascinating. But doing so quelled a lot of misconceptions about the area, and so there were times when people would kind of argue with Bob, especially, not me, because he was the one behind a lot of this knowledge, or he put me out, talk to this guy, talk to that guy. That was fun, but we had to deal with the misconceptions, and everything. Whereas with the backcountry, I'm dealing with, an area that so few people go to simply because the Madison and the Yellowstone and the Firewall, they're roadside.
Right.
And then a lot of the work you see in the literature, of course, in past magazines and a few books and everything, the writers that did those were probably under times where they had deadlines and everything. And so they talked to the people in West Yellowstone, the Martinez's and, Vint Johnson, people like that, rather than visit them. If they had time, they may run up and fish the fire hole, but, there's very few examples of, say, people walk. Yeah.
What are the ones that maybe people wouldn't know as much about in the Yellowstone? Did you cover that in your first book, or maybe give us a couple of those names?
That was in the Backcountry book.
Yeah. And
for instance, many of these places require some effort, physical and time effort, requirements to visit. For example, Heart Lake Basin, I talk about in the book. This is in the park, of course. It's on the other side of the highway from Lewis Lake, Shoshone Lake, which I talk about, not so much Lewis, but Shoshone. But these places take some effort to get into, and a lot of people can't afford this either time-wise or physically. But then there's other places where you can essentially drive to, like Centennial Valley, in headwaters of the Missouri River, the Elk Lakes and some of the creeks in there, Hidden Lake, and all these places that you can essentially drive to. And that makes it easier. And some of them, of course, have wonderful resorts there, like Elk Lake Resort, which dates back into the 20s and 30s, and Wilderness Edge, which does the same thing. That's Elk Lake, I say, is on, but Wilderness Edge Resort on Cliff Lake. And, those kind of places are roadside, and they have facilities, where you can stay, and they accommodate you and everything. Wonderful facilities and all. So there's a variety in there of places that require effort to get to. So, the younger or real passionate guys can get into these places. But I've gotten a lot of requests for information on these places, but they're for people that are, still working. They want to spend some time, but when they get in there, they want to have the best information available, so they have an unforgettable experience in a positive sense.
Yeah. And is that book that you have, The Backcountry, is that the best resource if somebody wanted to find some of these places that you're not going to see a lot of people?
Yeah, I think it is. There's other books out that are smaller, less complete, I give a lot of information there, about how to get there, and the use of Google Earth and, even topographic sheets. I identify places where they can sit down and get information about the character of these streams. You can do that through, the 7.5 minute USGS maps. And of course, Google Earth takes you around to look. You can look and see if the stream is forested, if it's a meadow stream. I give all that kind of information, and also the fishing gear that's most appropriate.
Out of all of that, how do you choose which streams to cover? Did you actually name streams?
In the book there, I cover, it's divided into, there's a section in Yellowstone Park, there's a section in eastern Idaho, another section on western Wyoming, and another
Let's take that one on eastern Idaho section, because I'm starting to, when you look at the map, you see, Yellowstone's divided. It's got Idaho, Montana, Wyoming.
Yeah.
But what is the eastern Idaho? What's included there? What are the streams there?
It's the southwest corner of the greater Yellowstone areas, is mostly East Idaho. You could argue that some of the Northwest Wyoming's in there too, but that's Yellowstone Park.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about backcountry stuff, sure, everybody knows about the South Fork Reach of the Snake River.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got the Blackfoot River, places like that. That's still, essentially not terribly well visited because the best times of the year for fishing. The upper Blackfoot River is, people are kind of gravitating towards the South Fork reach of the Snake River or the Henry's Fork. These places, and rightfully so, are so famous that the other places like, the Blackfoot River itself and Diamond Creek and Slug Creek, people don't visit them in a big manner. But that's one example. And then some of the creeks that dump into the South Fork of the South Fork reach of the Snake River and Palisade reservoirs are just wonderful places to fish. So, and these places like, Bear Creek and Big Elk Creek, they're all in How to Fish Them and When. It's all in books,
Yeah. Well, what are you in those books? Let's just take some of those. So you have a few of these. And are these mostly, if you say these Bear Creek and some of these places dumping into the South Fork, are these smaller, like really small streams, or is there a mix of smaller?
No, they're not really small streams. I would say they're medium.
Yeah.
They're all pretty much all cutthroat trout streams with maybe a few brown trout.
Yeah.
But they all have trophy-sized trout.
They're
mostly Yellowstone or refined spotted.
Okay.
They're all that size. The thing is, they're just not as heavily fished as the South Fork Reach or going further up Firehole or something like that.
Yeah. And most of these are walking. You're not floating these streams. Mostly you're wading. Yeah,
you wade them. You can't put boats or anything on them.
Yeah.
But Robinson Creek in eastern Idaho, it's a tributary to Warm River. But anyways, there's a lot of people come here. They crave, the solitude and combined with quality and stuff. But I think there's a certain amount of people that come here and they've experienced, say the crowds and everything and the recreationists that can't use these streams and all. So, it's important to people. They want to come here with an experience that includes good fishing and some privacy. And you can't blame them.
Yeah, so this is the way. So if you want to get out and maybe get away from the crowds and get up into where it's cutthroat only, and are these places the areas that have never been stocked over the years?
The only places now that and I'm talking Idaho Fish and Game, this is all in the regulations. The only places that they stock, and of course the only thing they really stock is rainbows overwhelmingly, there'd be places up in the resort areas, like in Ireland Park, the stretch from Big Springs to Max Inn, on the Henry's Fork. They stock there because there's so many cabins and people come up and visit. And they want to take the kids or they want to take grandpa fishing. Mm-hmm. They want to, make sure that he's going to catch fish. And then the other thing is the reservoirs and the lakes, they always stock them.
Yeah.
Too. But with respect to the streams, Idaho pretty much, or I should say the Upper Snake region, which covers, say this part of the greater Yellowstone area, they don't stock unless there's like a population demand that wants them, like the place I just mentioned. And but the reservoirs on something like, of course, Henry's Lake, that's always been stocked, with cutthroat trout.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's always spawning in there, but it's minimal.
Right. So on Henry's, they're stocking that. And then you also mentioned Sheridan Lake. Were you fishing that with Mike at the Drift Lodge?
No, I was fishing it. It's called Eagle Ridge Ranch. It's owned by Frank VanderSloot. He's the owner. He's probably the most financially in the best position in the state of Idaho. He owns a reservoir, which is historic. It goes back into the early 20th century. Originally, it was called Stringer Lake, and it was put in, they diverted Sheridan Creek into this reservoir. And it was originally put in just to have water for stock and, make sure that there'd be enough water for stock. Dry summers, they can let water out into the creek and run down through Shotgun Valley.
Oh, so did they create it originally for irrigation or for the fish?
Mainly it was created for cattle. And, to make sure the cattle had enough water. And this is in a part of Island Park where agriculture is so darn iffy. You just don't know the weather. Just like last Sunday, I couldn't believe the amount of snow. I think I'd mentioned to you that was sitting around in the trees.
Yeah.
An Island Park, the Upper Henry's Fork, last chance, back in the timber. And we didn't get as far as Henry's Lake, but and then, of course, the unpaved roads were, everybody had to run to the car wash after the trip,
Yeah.
But it's typical this time of year. It's this time of year up in Idaho, it's not spring, it's not winter. We call it sprinter.
Sprinter.
Combination of the two, yeah, and you never know, all of a sudden you may be going along, have nice weather, and bang, here comes a snowstorm.
Yeah. Right. When does the weather get where it's, you see more of the nice you could expect it's going to be good weather there?
It really starts in June.
Yeah, June.
Through the first part of June, it kind of builds up and everything. You get down a period when you can fish the river, the Henry's Fork and Harriman Park. Usually by the time the green drakes come out, sometime middle of June, you're getting much better. You might have days of wind and 50 degrees, but in general, it's getting much better. It's getting, you're earning the month of June, let's say.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that, that's the cool thing about the area. We've talked about this quite a bit on other episodes, but there's just so much going on, right? All the famous places, but then like you mentioned, you have all these places that nobody knows about. If you want to get up and get out from the crowds, you can do that pretty easy. And Sheridan as well. Like Sheridan's a private lake. Well,
Sheridan, it's a private lake. And what you do is contact Eagle Ridge Ranch. It's got a website, and they can give you the rates.
Step into the world where the river whispers and the fishing is nothing short of legendary. This year, I ventured into the heart of eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory, where the fish were larger than life and the waters held the secrets of the best fly fishing out west. Yellowstone Teton territory is not just a location, it's a gateway to adventures that will etch themselves into your memory. With crystal clear rivers like the Henry's Fork and the South Fork of the Snake, and enough lakes to keep you going all year long, make your way to Yellowstone Teton territory and embark on a journey to one of North America's finest fly fishing destinations. Whether you're planning your trip now or just dreaming it up, the YTT is where those dreams turn into reality. Remember, Yellowstone Teton territory. That's Teton, Teton. It's time to experience Eastern Idaho for yourself and support this podcast at the same time. What was the story with him, the person you mentioned, the history of the guy? What does he do? How is he? Sounds like one of the richest people out in that region.
Yeah, he is financially, I think he's a top dog in the state. He is a guy that developed this Melaleuca company. It's a wellness company.
Melaleuca?
Yeah, Melaleuca. They've got a website too, but it's they distribute their products around the world. And Frank has worked, years building this company. But in the process, he's outdoor oriented in many ways and positive socially, and he's a good guy. But he's outdoor oriented, so he bought this reservoir from another family. I think they were a ranching family. And just for a place to escape, as you can imagine, a businessman of this magnitude, he doesn't have a heck of a lot of time to get out and enjoy things or get away and do some thinking. He owns some other places around eastern Idaho and maybe the state of Idaho itself. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's been able to purchase these and hold them, for his family. But this particular reservoir, if you're a fishing person, this is outstanding. This place is, he takes good care. He's got a manager that oversees it with a crew of guys, that maintain the resort itself, Eagle Ridge. And, besides fishing, they do hunting and just horseback riding and, these kind of things too. So it's just an outdoor company or concern, you might say, that caters to people. You want to take your family out for an outing, for a week or something, that kind of thing. But yeah, they've got rates and their ability on their website.
And how is it different from, say, Henry's Lake?
Well, it's all rainbow trout, whereas Henry's is all cutthroat with a few hybrids, mixed in. But again, it's private, whereas Henry's Lake, there's plenty of public access on Henry's Lake. Not the case on Sheridan. But there's other reservoirs around this neck of too that are similar.
Right, you have lots of other reservoirs in the area. What would be a couple other big, maybe in the Yellowstone? What would be one reservoirs you'd be fishing kind of that might? Are they covered in your book, or do you cover mostly streams?
Yeah, Hibgon Lake or Quake Lake, places like I don't really cover them because they're so popular.
Yeah.
But some of the other lakes and reservoirs, like the Graben Lakes in Montana, Cliff Wade, and Elk Lake, I cover them, but most extensively probably Elk Lake because the others are much more easily approached and everything. But yeah, we do. And then I got a few mountain lakes in there, like Blair Lake and the Palisade Lakes over in Palisade Creek, going into Palisade Reservoir. But you got to realize that, yeah, these creeks are small from the standpoint you can't put a boat on them. They're big enough where they have good numbers of trophy-sized fish, and I'm talking, fish up to 20 inches plus. They range up to that. Not every fish is like that, but they range up to that high. So a person's got a chance of getting a trophy-sized fish in a moderately sized creek.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then certain times of year that your chances of having a good time are better than others too. And I relate to that also.
I see. And so, and I guess back to Sheridan. So is it how many people, is it a large lake, small lake? Is it comparable?
Trying to think of in size. I would say moderate in size, nowhere the size of Island Park Reservoir.
Okay. Quarter the size,
but you'd have to be familiar with some of the lakes we have up in this neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm trying to think of an example that might be good. Probably Grassy Lake.
Okay. And how are you guys fishing Sheridan?
This time of year, the only hatches going on are like midges. So midge life cycle patterns, hung off an indicator. And there's two other things about this lake and some of the other lakes in our area. You walk down the shoreline, and shoreline is covered with snail shells. So right away, snail shells mean easy protein for fish. So you want you can't say life cycle, but you say snail imitating patterns. Uh-huh. The other thing is all of our lakes have a leech complement, especially our beatment ones. Yeah. And so patterns like that now later in the year when the damselflies and the speckled duns get going, you switch to those, patterns for the life cycle for those things.
What about the fall if we were fishing late kind of September?
Well, streamers always work in all the lakes here when we start cooling off, various streamer patterns. But the problem by then is a lot of our lakes, they moss up. You've got aquatic plants. And so surface fishing or just something suspending patterns under an indicator like speckled dun life cycle patterns and midge life cycle patterns are always effective. But if you can find places where you don't have that many weeds, the shallows in all the lakes, it will moss up. Henry's is a real good example.
Yep.
But you can fish your streamers and your leech patterns. And by the way, one thing that's very effective, a lot of people don't really look at a lot, is early in the season, dragonfly nymphs. They're extremely effective in places where there's a good dragonfly population. And that's always not the case in reservoirs. You get our slow-moving rivers like the Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it doesn't open in the park. It doesn't open up until Memorial Day weekend. But a lot of the reservoirs, very early in the season, anything that imitates a dragonfly nymph, this could be something simple like a big woolly bugger, or, even a rubber legs, something like that. They can be very effective. Then, of course, other things take over later in the year.
Gotcha. And at the Expo, or do you have a lot of people there that are talking about fishing, the Sheridans and all of those waters up there? Is that what a majority of your guests are that are at the show?
Well, we do have a destination program section, and usually they don't target just a single, spot. They target an area, like they may talk about, say, the South Fork Reach of the Snake River, but that stream flows about 70 miles through this part of Idaho, and so they talk about that in a seasonal sense. How you start fishing it early in the year, then in the mid-season, then later, how to do that. And so these destination areas, they're programs that you see people out on the circuit, that give these programs. And for example, Bob, a few years back, he did a program on fishing, the Madison River drainage, not the river itself, the drainage, especially up where he lives, in West Yellowstone. In the past, we've had people like Mike Lawson do the Henry's Fork in a general sense. I just use those guys because of, their icon names.
Mm-hmm.
But there's usually, we usually have maybe, I'd say 6 or 8 of those programs. They're usually an hour apiece. And, and then, of course, in the expo, we have tying workshops. For example, give an example, Steven Fernandez. I think you're aware of Steven.
Yeah.
Technically, he's, essentially the best around. He does a workshop, and it usually fills up. And, of course, we've had in the past, we've had people come in from Mike Lawson's shop and try to, do workshops on their particular flies. Just, again, icon people. So besides the tie-in demos and the commercial vendors and our annual banquet with its live auction, the expo has workshops, tying workshops. Jay Buckner, his entomology workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Demand for that if you want to get into knowledge of the insect life, affecting trout. Things like workshops like that, as well as the destination programs. It's all on the website.
Yeah, that's the srcexpo.org.
Yeah. There's also a list of tyers on that website, the people that tied. There's a list of the commercial vendors, donators, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty darn complete.
Yeah. This year in 2024, what was the biggest surprise to you at the event?
Well, it's hard to say because even before the MAC existed, the Mountain America Center existed, we held the event in one of the hotels in town, and it's always been crowded. That time of year, people are hungry. They want information. They want to get out fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So people are, I'm coming up here in August. I'm coming here in July. What can I learn about what to use and when and what flies? All that stuff's available in the show.
Yeah. Right. That's what's cool about it. So if you're planning a trip to that area, then you should hit this show because you're going to have a lot more knowledge on, but there'll probably be somebody specific to the river you're fishing or the lake up there.
Yeah. We've had people, Henry's Lake specialists, in the past, Bill Sheese, he wrote a book on fishing Henry's Lake. People like that. The reason is these are very popular places with respect to the public. Yeah, I've done a program that relates what's in the fly fishing in the Greater Yellowstone Backcountry book. I've done it around the country in places, but I'm so darn busy dealing with the tyers and helping with the banquet, the Saturday night banquet. It's been years since I've done a program at the Expo, but I've told the guys if necessary, let me know, because the program I've done around the country, various places, Washington State, Michigan and Pennsylvania, places like that. But the Expo, it's got a little bit of everything for everybody with respect to where to go fishing, what to use, what fly patterns. And the flytyers that we have they're great guys. They give out information. They give out example flies. And, if there's somebody interested in a particular pattern, here's how to tie it. Some of the guys even have instruction sheets they'll hand out for this pattern or that pattern.
Yeah. How far do you get people coming into the show from? Is it a mix of the western states around there, or do you know kind of the audience?
Yeah, mainly people that are regional, mainly. But actually, we've had some Europeans. We've had tyers from Ireland and Holland. We had a guy, a friend of Jay Buckner's, that came over and tied it. He was Polish. We've had Charles Jardine several times.
Oh, yeah, Charles, right.
Yeah, several times. He'd tie flies and do a program on fishing in England and stuff. And boy, you guys are lucky living in the Rocky Mountains, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a different deal. Nice. So as you look ahead at 2025, I know you haven't started thinking about it yet, but what's the first step? Do you kind of look at people that were there last year and say, hey, do you want to come back and then fill those spots that are empty?
Yeah. Exactly. The first thing we do is, okay, you guys have survived 2024. Do you want to go on to 2025?
Right.
And we've had a few people that come to us and say, hey, I want to take part in this show. This is terrific.
Yeah. What are the events? I know you have you mentioned a few of the things. I was talking to the folks at the Oregon show, the Albany show, and they were saying they were trying some new things. Like I think one of them was like some sort of a tenkara testing, kind of they had all these little events that they were testing out. Are you guys doing some of that too, where you're trying new things to get people interested or engaged out there?
Some of the commercial vendors do some of that too, some of their new products. But as a matter of fact, we did have a presentation on tenkara techniques. And of course, this is great country for that because we have, so many smaller creeks. And even, the creeks are a little bit larger, I mentioned, like the Palisade Reservoir tributaries or the Salt River tributaries. Tenkara can apply to those too. These are walk-in streams and everything. But of course, you got to be careful, about being visible and walking up and down banks of these streams. But yeah, we have a number of streams that are very suitable for the tenkara technique, since you mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. What do you think would be, if you look kind of out or just at this last year, kind of 3 takeaways from the event? Are there any big things that stick out when you say, hey, that thing was a success? This is, why it was a great show?
Well, I think it's because of the variety of events and, variety of, say, different parts. We looked at the whole spectrum of fly fishing. And I think a lot of people are looking for that kind of information. For example, we've had a workshop on tying knots.
That's a good one.
And of course, Jay Buckner and his entomology workshop, it's like an every other year or something that we offer, those kind of things. We've had workshops that are centered around rod making, but usually those are given elsewhere, but there might be an information thing, getting equipment, looking for the right kind of bamboo, looking for this, looking for that. Rod making takes quite a bit of time to do, a reasonably good rod. But one thing that really stands out that really helped us was I'd mentioned that the Mountain America Center also has hockey games.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we have the minor league hockey team here. And hockey games can last various amounts of time. Penalties and overtimes and things like that.
Right.
The game they had just before our show didn't finish up until late in the season or late in the evening. And so for them to get their crew in there and convert, their facility over to a fishing show from the hockey match, took a certain amount of time. And on the Friday, we had to open an hour later than we usually did. Instead of 8 o'clock, it was 9 o'clock. Well, these guys are good enough. They realize that we're not out there trying to make money. When we do make money, it goes back into conservation and education.
Yeah.
They gave us a break on the original costs that we had for the contract. The guys that run this place are community oriented. And they would have done the same thing if it had been a basketball tournament that, the previous event had butted into their time.
It's a good group.
Yeah, that makes that facility stand out, not only our mind, but it's good business because it gets out into the public, and they see that these guys are very reasonable.
That's right. And are people staying out at the, there's not a hotel there. You kind of staying at some hotels around the area?
There's hotels in the area. The nearest one's about a half a mile away. But remember, this place has been there this is only the 3rd year of operation back. You go there and around it, particularly to the south and a little bit towards the west, there's a lot of open land that used to be potato farms. Well, I'm sure that there are people are looking at now that place, the MAC has established a reputation of, bringing people into there. I'm sure there's going to be hotels here in the near future within walking distance.
Yeah. It's early, still
right
early.
Now, the closest is about a half a mile away.
Perfect. Good. Well, I guess before we get out of here, maybe just, looking ahead at 2025, what would be something somebody can be, get excited about that might want to take advantage of this that hasn't been there before?
Well, as soon as we get the website going, you got to realize that it takes time and effort to get people that are going to, participate, say commercial vendors and tyers. As soon as that gets on the way to being tied down to maybe 75%, that information will go on the website. That usually happens sometime, maybe beginning in 1st of February. At that time, you'll be able to see how the show is developing, who's there, and what's also going to you have to realize is a lot of the people in 2024 are going to be back 2025 because the commercial vendors did very well. Most of the fly tyers, and I'm aware of, I had with Hal Gordon and I head up the fly tying. The only complaint we had was the lighting in there in the show is very good. You don't have to bring your own lighting. You really don't need it, but you get the older fellows, their vision isn't quite as good as it used to be. We got to figure out a way for them to bring their lights in if they want to. There's a few ways that this can be done. We've got to decide how to do this, and what we'll do is we'll talk to certain guys, but that's kind of more of a,
not too big of a deal. That's something they can get figured out. No problem.
Yeah. But with the main show, the event in the main sense, we're not going to change much of anything because it's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There'll be no additions and things, that happens. Like, we've had all the drift boat dealers that wanted, they can come in. I don't think we're going to get to a point where the recreationists, we're going to do anything with the, recreational floaters. I don't think we're going to go that far. This is strictly fly fishing.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is send everybody out. We'll put a link, srcexpo.org. That way, when people connect to this, they can easily check it out and see what the lineup looks like. And then we'll have a link to your email in the show notes and phone number if they want to connect on some of the resources we talked about, the 2 books on Yellowstone. One's Greater Yellowstone and West Yellowstone. You've kind of covered it all. Do you have a next book that you're going to be looking at doing after this?
I don't know. I'd considered a book on meadow streams. But I look at the last 2 books, and I see I talk so much about meadow streams, the Upper Blackfoot River, that section on the Heart River in Yellowstone Park. Fall River Basin essentially is probably the best meadow stream stretch. I wouldn't be surprised. I could say country. You've got 2 beautiful rivers and a couple of very, very good creeks. Some of those Centennial Valley streams. I've talked so much about meadow streams, I just don't know if I want to develop it.
Gotcha. Is meadow a lot different than some of these backcountry? Is this more like you're talking in the backcountry or more up in the mountains and the hills?
Well, there's backcountry meadow streams, like I say, in the Upper Blackfoot River, Fall River, Eckler River in the park. Of course, the one everybody's popular with is the Madison in the park. It's section along the West Entrance Road, but there's as many fishermen on it as there are trout in, so what I'm getting is places where, the meadows that I'm talking about, it'd be the same thing. The smaller streams, that the meadow streams, we've got some of those around, some of the streams, outside the Greater Yellowstone area, but close by, these kind of things. So I don't know. I'll keep working on it, keep thinking about it. But right now, I'm not really enthusiastic because I'd be covering again places that I've talked about before.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Well, that all sounds good, Bruce. We'll be in touch with you for sure as we start to look at 2025 and the show. And thanks for all the information today and putting together the shows and the books on, Yellowstone and that whole area. And we'll definitely be in touch moving forward.
Okay, well, just one other thing. You can tell the world that the giant stonefly hatch is proceeding up the Henry's Fork. And it'll go on until we get going with all the drake hatches in Harriman. That'll probably start, in the Last Chance Harriman area. That'll start middle of June. Then there's a whole sequence of aquatic insects and then terrestrial insects, such as the Henry's Fork and the Madison, all this stuff coming up. It'll be the same as in the past.
That's all. What would be a good book for all of those hatches you just mentioned, like the June, the famous,
Mike Lawson did a book called Fishing Spring Creeks. And he also did another book recently on the Henry's Fork. And then, of course, Renee Harp's Learning from the Water.
Yeah.
It's probably really detailed. It's really an interesting book on this. Books like that. And then some of the in-shop books that Craig Mathews put out, Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
Some of those books would be, I would say, would be excellent. That kind of information, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we'll track those down and throw those in the show notes. And thanks again, Bruce. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah. It's time to get to Eastern Idaho. Take a look on the website and head out to Yellowstone Teton territory. You can go to wetflyswing.com/Teton right now and check in and see some of the outfitters and lodges and all the good stuff they have going out there. You can also get more information on this event, the Fly Fishing and Tying Expo in Eastern Idaho. Check it out. All right, wanted to give a quick shout out to our Wet Fly Swing Pro membership community. This is the shop. This is the place you can go if you want to up your game and build that greatest trip of the season this year. We've got a bunch of resources in there, including the community. The community is one of the biggest parts where you can connect with other people who are traveling and fishing in the areas that you want to connect with. And we're going to be also bringing in some great resources to help you prepare for that trip. You can check it out right now, wetflyswing.com/pro. If you sign up there, I will follow up with you, or you can shoot me an email anytime, and I'll give you the details. We're launching the beta. This is the beta version soon, and you can get it right now at 50% off for life. That's the big bonus right now. You can get this thing 50% off for life. It doesn't get any better than that, and there's a bunch of tools and resources if you want to take this the next step. All right, the next episode, you want to stay tuned for this. Hank Shaw is here, and Hank Shaw is an award-winning chef. He is a hunter, a fisherman. He's cooked everything, and he breaks it down. It's going to be awesome. You're going to learn some tips from him, and probably, I'd say, some of the greatest cooking books out there. The names are great. You got to check it out. Hank Shaw. Don't miss this one. All right, I'm out of here. Hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon, wherever in the country you are. And I appreciate you for stopping in today and checking out the show. Talk to you soon.